I opened TikTok to check one thing. One thing. 47 minutes later, I was watching a video of a dog learning to skateboard. And I genuinely could not tell you how I got there. I was not looking for that dog. I did not ask for that dog. The algorithm found me. Before I even knew I was lost. Here is what nobody told me, and what most people still do not fully understand. That scroll you just did, the one that lasted way longer than you planned, was not an accident. It was engineered. Deliberately. Precisely. By people whose entire job is to make sure you do not stop. I work in design and video production, which means I live on these platforms more than most people probably should. And I started noticing something that made me uncomfortable. The more I used them, the less I felt like I was choosing what to look at. I felt like something was choosing for me. So I went looking for answers, and what I found was more unsettling than I expected. Let me start with the number that stopped me cold. 5.79 billion people have active social media identities as of April 2026. That is 69.9% of every human being on Earth. And the average person among those billions spends 2 hours and 21 minutes on social platforms every single day. That is not leisure. That is not choice. That is a behavioral outcome that someone engineered. Here is how it works. Every platform, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, runs on the same core principle. The algorithm's job is not to show you what is good. Its job is to show you what keeps you watching. Those are not the same thing. And the gap between those two things is where a lot of damage quietly happens. The mechanism behind this is something called variable ratio reinforcement. It is the same psychological principle that powers slot machines. You pull the lever, sometimes you win, sometimes you do not. And the unpredictability is exactly what makes it impossible to stop. Your brain does not release dopamine when you get the reward. It releases dopamine in anticipation of a possible reward. Every scroll is a pull of the lever. Every new post is a maybe. And your brain is chasing that maybe, not the content itself. In July 2025, researchers monitored 500 people's brainwaves in real time while they scrolled through social media. Within minutes of opening Instagram or TikTok, participants' brain activity began changing in patterns identical to those seen in gambling addiction. Identical. Not similar, not comparable. The same patterns. That study was published in a major medical journal and got almost no mainstream coverage. Think about why. The platforms know this better than anyone. 14 U.S. state attorneys general filed lawsuits against TikTok in 2024. The District of Columbia complaint specifically cited a dopamine-inducing algorithm designed to maximize the time young users spend on the app. That phrase is from the legal complaint, not from a critic, from an official government document. They designed it to induce dopamine, and it works. Between 5 and 10% of Americans now meet clinical criteria for social media addiction, according to California State University. That is between 16 and 33 million people in one country. 82% of Gen Z adults acknowledge their own dependency on platforms, not suspecting it, acknowledging it. And 93% of Gen Z admit to losing sleep because they stayed up past their intended bedtime to keep scrolling. 93%. But here is where it goes beyond just addiction. Because the algorithm does not just keep you watching, it shapes what you think. Every platform uses what is called a filter bubble. The algorithm learns what you engage with and shows you more of it. More of the same opinions, more of the same type of content, more of the same emotional triggers. Over time, your feed becomes a mirror that reflects a very specific version of the world back at you. Not the actual world, a curated world, designed to keep you engaged. And here is the uncomfortable part. Engagement is highest when content triggers strong emotion. Not happiness, not curiosity, not learning, outrage, fear, moral indignation. Those emotions keep people scrolling longer than any other type of content, which means the algorithm, purely by optimizing for watch time, naturally selects for content that makes you angry or afraid. Not because anyone decided to make you angry, because anger is profitable. I want you to think about your own feed for a second. When was the last time you came off social media feeling genuinely good, not entertained, not distracted, actually better than when you started? For most people, if they are honest, the answer is rarely. And yet they go back. Every day. Multiple times. That is not weakness. That is engineering working exactly as intended. TikTok's own internal data, revealed in a Kentucky Attorney General complaint, showed that 19% of users aged 13 to 15 and 25% of users aged 16 to 17 were active on the platform between midnight and 5 in the morning, not late at night, between midnight and 5 a.m. These are children, in school, being kept awake by an algorithm, optimizing for engagement, and 48% of teens who spend 5 or more hours a day on devices exhibit at least one suicide risk factor, compared to 33% of teens who spend only 2 hours daily. That gap represents real lives. For adolescent females specifically, each additional hour of social media use increases depression risk by 13%. That number compounds. Now, I am going to say something that might feel counterintuitive. The algorithm is not evil. It does not have intentions. It is not trying to hurt anyone. It is a system optimizing for a metric. The metric is time on platform, and it is extraordinarily good at its job. The problem is not that the algorithm is broken. The problem is that what it is optimizing for and what is good for you, those are different things, and nobody asked you which one you preferred. In 2026, there is some movement toward giving people more control. Some platforms are experimenting with letting users adjust what signals the algorithm uses. Instagram has tested chronological feed options. YouTube lets you clear your history and restart recommendations. But these tools are buried deep in settings that most people never find, because the default is always designed to maximize engagement, not well-being. The opt-out exists. The opt-in to something healthier is just deliberately hard to find. Here is something I started doing after I went down this research rabbit hole. I began treating my social media use the way I treat junk food, not eliminating it, not pretending it does not exist, but being deliberate about when and how much. I set a timer before I open any platform. When the timer goes off, I close it. It sounds simple. It is surprisingly hard the first few times, because the pull is real. The design is working on you. Whether you are aware of it or not, awareness does not make you immune, but it does give you something to push back with. The next generation is actually getting better at this, according to 2026 research on algorithmic polarization. Younger users are increasingly aware of manipulation and are better at tuning out content that is designed to make them react, rather than think. That is progress, slow but real. 36% of people have taken intentional breaks from social media. 32% have deleted apps due to overuse. 24% removed apps because of negative effects on their mental health. People are starting to push back. Quietly, individually, without a coordinated movement. Just people noticing something feels off and deciding to do something about it. I went looking for that dog video the other day. The skateboarding one. Tried to find it deliberately. Could not. It was gone. Replaced by whatever the algorithm decided I needed to see next. And that is kind of the whole point. You never actually chose any of it. The algorithm chose it for you, and then convinced you it was what you wanted. The question worth sitting with is a simple one. How much of what you think, feel, and believe right now was chosen by you? And how much was served to you by a system, optimizing for someone else's metric? I do not have a clean answer to that. Neither do you. But asking the question is where it starts.